And we are live and beginning our second experiment of me reading a few of my Allgemeiner articles. Hey, Evan, great to see you. Going to be reading some of my Allgemeiner articles from this week and last, and performing a little bit, commenting a little bit. We'll see if anybody else wants to join. But I'm trying to figure out what if I'm going to have some sort of visual setup or something to make it visually interesting. Since I personally don't really want to be on camera, I'm only just doing this to like create new content, and this is what people want. So, I guess this will be visually interesting to accompany what I hope will be interesting commentary. This is frankincense and myrrh incense. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate the comments on rings. It's been something I've been doing last year or so. Kind of a mystical, magical spell kind of thing. Um, that sort of thing, but also kind of a imitation. I've been on such an Alan Moore kick lately, and that's something that he does aesthetically. So since I'm doing that, doing the beard, doing the long hair, I'm going to admit it. uh, I mean, I'm doing my own thing. It's not like imitating or anything, but inspiration. Skip. Okay. I'll wait little bit, see if any more people want to show up before I start reading the articles. But if it's just going to be you, Evan, then that's fine. Did you have any questions, by the way? Any comments, suggestions, or anything? I'm happy to answer any of your questions before we get started. I know I was trashing things. we we had a good discussion on film, didn't we, Evan? We need to get back to that at some point. I'll talk about film in some of the upcoming live streams. I've got a bunch of. I'm going to talk about my Criterion Collection movies in particular. Troy James, thanks for joining us. Um, I'm going to wait a few more minutes to see if anybody else wants to join us, but I I'm an I write for the Allgemeiner, Jewish newspaper, and I'm on the anti-Semitism beat. So every every day, save for Fridays, about I'm usually doing 3 to 4 articles a week for them. So every day I'm going to look and see what are the big anti-Semitism stories to write about, whether it's far left or far right. Or I'm kind of focusing on far right now. I've written about why I'm really concerned with the rise of Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes, and now Megyn Kelly seems to be joining that contingent too, and Steve Bannon and Marjorie Taylor Greene. So I'm more concerned about the rise of them than continuing to focus on the rise of left wing anti Semites. I've dealt with them enough, so I feel like I can shift a little bit to focus on the right now. And I've got and I wrote about that. I'm not as worried about the Islamists right now overall. I mean, right now, terrorism wise, there's concerns because of the Iraq War. Oh, Evan asks, how did I feel about Sinners winning Best Original Screenplay? Um, I didn't see enough movies last year to judge. Sinners was the only one of the nominated pictures that I saw. Um, and I thought it was kind of ridiculous that it got nominated for Best Picture and everything because it's just a horror movie. um, for what it is, it's good, but so I can't really judge, compared to the others. I've just been falling off of film for so many years now. So, but I'll get into that in another piece. Though, I mean, I've still got Watchmen. I've still got some film here. I've still got recognize this from film, don't we? Pirates of the Caribbean. This is a promotional thing that I got. Has a little hidden knife inside. It's not really sharp or anything, but when I got it, I thought, oh, that's cool. Okay. I think I'm going to go ahead and start reading the articles now and discussing them and riffing off of them. I'll try and be entertaining. And I may, let's see, I'm going to start using, I've got both the whiteboard here, but I've also got this black paper that I'm getting into starting to use. So if I want to make a point or something, also, since we got the incense going, got to get the right vibe. I've been encouraging non-alcoholic beer lately, and so I've got this Dos Equis lime and salt that I'm quite into. So yeah, it's part of my treating my anxiety this year. Haven't been doing any alcohol. Um, Not that I had a drinking problem, but just to keep the anxiety down. One more thing to just avoid. Mm. But yeah, this lime and salt Dos Equis, Mexican style. Okay, enough delays. First article, I've got three articles that I'm going to read. First one was published yesterday. Second one was published last week on March 11th. And then the other one before that was on March 6th. First article, let's see, let's try this pen. Okay. This first one I'm going to read, Trump proclaims isolationist critics, quote, are not MAGA while defending Mark Levin from vulgar insult. Oh, hey Daniel, you're joining just in time. I was just about to start reading the articles that I'm going to read. So you jumped in just to the good time. This first article that I wrote yesterday, um, this is the exciting fun story. Um, Mark Levin versus Megyn Kelly. For those who may not be familiar, two right wing pro Trump podcasters. And I got greenlit to write this story because Trump jumped in on a X flame war in which Megyn Kelly hit below the belt, as you'll see when I read the article, or as some of you probably already know. So I wrote this article, and it was mostly prominent because this was early incidents in which Trump is starting to push back against those in his right wing base that are not happy about him breaking his promise not to start another war in the Middle East. So that's why it was particularly notable, not just because it's entertaining and vulgar. Who am I to complain about vulgarity? I mean, I'm dropping f bombs and George Carlining it up, but I think people. Well, you'll see. It, I'm artful in my vulgarity. This is playground stuff. So anyway, I'm going to read that story. Then I'm going to supplement that story with second one. Last week, I this is titled "Iran, Russia Push Disinformation to Spread Anti-Semitism, Undermine the West." So this one is based off of. I attended a briefing from the Simon Wiesenthal Center last week, in which they had some of their had a couple experts come on to talk about Iran's disinformation that they'd been doing. Oh, Daniel says he's in Mark Levin's corner on this. Yeah, yeah. I mean, Yeah, yeah. Mark Levin is taking the pro-Israel side, and Megan Kelly she's wanting to hang with Nick Fuentes. So yeah, I mean, neither of them is behaving that well, but of course, Mark Levin is right morally and ideologically and all that. So, second story um, is going to talk about first Iran, their disinformation, and then um, I juxtapose that with a Italian report on the history of Russian disinformation. So you get this current Iran stuff and then historical Russian stuff, and um, and as people know, and as I'm going to keep saying that I encourage viewing history and current politics through the lens of disinformation, the through the activities of understanding what espionage agencies do. So very important. So we're going to talk about Iran, Russian disinformation, and Russia disinfo history. And finally, I decided to just throw on another one here because I think maybe if we include all three of them, this is from March 6th, which I may as well talk about. This is a weird story. This is a weird story here of Qatar Saudi media shoot down Tucker Carlson conspiracy as ADL warns Iran conflict fueling online anti Semitism. This was strange because Tucker Carlson put out a claim that, well, you'll see when I read it, but claimed that Saudi Arabia and Qatar had found Mossad agents that were planning uh, false flag type stuff, and anybody can check that, and they immediately shot him down. No, that's not what's happening, and it's just anyway. I wrote about that. So we got Tucker Carlson, Qatar, and Saudi refute story. Okay. Oh yeah, I guess I do have sinners here, don't I? Somebody leave a comment here. Oh, Evan, you've got a question. Let me answer it real quick. Okay, Evan, what are you saying here? If you don't mind my okay, I'll read it aloud for others who may not see. Mr. Swindle. You can call me David, by the way. We're both, yeah, it's fine. Mr. Swindle, if you don't mind my asking, I'm incredibly against anti Semitism. I wrote a paper about its roots and history for school. How does one acknowledge the issues with Iran, government wise, human rights wise, anti Semitism, etc., while also acknowledging the issues of the U.S. getting involved with striking Iran, especially considering the U.S. claiming they need to destroy Iran's nuclear program? Sorry if this question wasn't entirely related to what you're talking about. No, that's fine. You're always welcome to interrupt with a question, because I'm happy to adapt this. So you're wanting to understand you're against anti-Semitism, and how does one acknowledge the human? Okay, so yeah, the I like to say, and one of the things that we kind of get in the habit of saying in pro-Israel media space is I like to distinguish that we're dealing with the Islamic regime in Iran, that there's a difference between the current government of Iran and the country itself, the people itself. So that's one thing that you can do, particularly rhetorically, is don't say Iran, say the Islamic regime in Iran, because then you're clearly talking about this particular regime. Now, the issues of the U.S. getting involved, you're asking, okay, so we can acknowledge, yes, the regime is top supporter of terrorism. They oppress their people. They support Hezbollah and Hamas, and they're not just against Israel; they're against Jews all over the world. Um, p- Paying people in Australia, I wrote about this last year that they were paying people in Bitcoin to go and commit to set fires to synagogues and do other hate crimes. So Iran's terrible, but acknowledging the issues of the U.S. getting involved with striking Iran, especially considering the U.S. claiming they need to destroy Iran's nuclear. Okay, so now what is the issues? I've written a bit about my objections to the war that Trump has started. Um, a couple things in particular. Apart, I mean, the first thing is I lived through the Iraq War. I was in college. Oh God, it's 2003. I was sophomore in high school and in college, and when George W. Bush took the country to war, he had to get congressional approval. He had to make the argument that we needed to go to war, and gradually build enough of a consensus and build other countries. It was a long process. Trump didn't do that because he's not wanting to do that kind of a war. He thinks that he can do something like Venezuela, that if you just kill the person in charge, you can install somebody that you can then work with. That's what he thought he was going to be doing here. And they'd just be knocking out a new person, put in a new leader you can work with. And that was never going to work. There isn't some other leader you can just plug in that you can work with. And the whole regime itself is evil, corrupt, revolutionary, and apocalyptic, essentially. They're Shiite, that form of Twelver Shiite theology. So it's just a fundamentally different thing. People want to try and make comparisons to Libya or to Venezuela, and Iran is different. This was one of the key lessons that I got from my Middle East mentor, Barry Rubin, who was Middle East editor at Pajamas Media, and I went to work with him and edited his last blog post before he died. You have to look at every single country in the Middle East as though it's its own thing. You have to look at the individual history, the individual personalities, and see how complex it is. And with Iran, it's very complex. So I've never supported an invasion of Iran, even though I'm very hawkish on Iran. I want to see the people living in freedom. But there's problems with doing that. The key one is that Iran has built up a really powerful deterrent system. And we're starting to see that now. We're starting to see attacks on synagogues. We're starting to see more hate crimes. We're starting to see individual lone wolf terrorists. Um, and that's always been a plan for Iran that if they get attacked, particularly by America, they launch their sleeper cells. And they don't even have to worry about just their sleeper cells. Lone wolves will want to go and do attacks on their own. So that's one of the things that Trump unleashed is terrorist attacks against Jews and against all people. And that didn't need to happen. Um, Likewise, it didn't need to happen of the Strait of Hormuz being shut down now. Um, so the question is, well, what should have happened instead? The continuation of what's been happening of gradual economic warfare to weaken the regime from within, and particularly espionage. I'm a big espionage person, as I've been talking about. The Mossad, Israel's espionage efforts need to be the primary thing in helping to support the collapse of the regime from within. So that's my take there. That we should certainly be supporting um, the freedom of Iran, but the way that it's been done, with no real planning and no real understanding by people that are total amateurs that don't understand what they're doing. Our military in place knows what they're doing, but the people trying to do an objective of Trump, Hegseth, Marco Rubio, they don't. So that's really the key problem there, as I understand it right now. And I'll write about it more. But you're always welcome to hit me up if you have any questions or anything. So I'm going to go ahead and read the article now. But go ahead and anybody's welcome to chime in with any questions or thoughts. Let's see. Okay. So this is my article from yesterday, and I'm quite pleased with this one. Trump proclaims isolationist critics are not MAGA while defending Mark Levin from vulgar insult. And I will try and do this in a bit of a performative way. But first, Evan, you had a question. Appreciate you answering my question, David. I won't lie, I'm an anti-war person, but even I know that change is needed in Iran. That's all right to be anti-war. I'm in an anti-war mode right now, too. You know what the Bible says. Ecclesiastes. It's my favorite. There's a time for war, there's a time for peace. I'm in a peace mode right now. I don't think we should be in war right now for all sorts of reasons. And it puts me in some strange intellectual places with some people. Okay. An uncouth online argument between two of the most prominent American conservative commentators inspired an intervention on Sunday night from U.S. President Donald Trump, who backed radio host Mark Levin during a heated exchange with podcaster Megyn Kelly. And maybe I should just put in some context right now for people who may not know. Mark Levin's one of the top conservative radio hosts, podcast hosts. He's got a Fox News show. Has been pretty prominent for about 15, 20 years. Been one of the big ones. Um, I agree with him a lot of the time on a lot of the stuff. He's particularly good on, Israel stuff, good on my area of focus on dealing with Islamists. I don't care for his rhetorical approach a lot of the time. Oh, hey, Bo, thank you for joining us. Good timing. I was just starting to read the article because I've been starting out with answering questions and things. So these are the three that I'm going to be talking about. First, starting this one about Mark Levin. Then I've got the one about Iran and Russia disinformation. And then I thought appropriate I'd throw on the story that I did about Tucker Carlson and Qatar and Saudi Arabia rejecting some of his conspiracy theories. So good timing. Glad to have you. Okay, so I'll continue. The background, Mark Levin, major talk radio figure now, and Megyn Kelly, people probably already know that she's jumped around a little bit in the TV space, but now she's tried to go much farther right. She's out of the mainstream space. She's trying to get in the same space as Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and making her name that way. So this is about that. Trump also defended his policy toward Iran in his Truth Social post, lambasting isolationist critics of his foreign policy as not being part of his so-called Make America Great Again MAGA movement. Quote, oh, should I read it in a Trump voice? Maybe I should. No, I won't. I won't. Mark Levin, a truly great. I'll play into it a little bit. Mark Levin, a truly great American patriot, is somewhat under siege by other people with far less intellect, capability, and love for our country. Mark is tough, strong, and brilliant, hence the nickname the Great One, conceived by our MAGA friend, the wonderful Sean Hannity. end quote, Trump wrote before effusively praising Levin as, quote, a true conservative and intellect who was far smarter than those who criticize him, but above all, is a man of great wisdom. Great wisdom. Great wisdom. And of course, with the frequent capitalizations. Trump warned that, quote, those that speak ill of Mark will quickly fall by the wayside, as do the people whose ideas, policies, and footings are not sound, end quote. He went on to proclaim, and this is in capital letters, of course, they are not MAGA, I am. And MAGA includes not allowing Iran, a sick, demented, and violent terrorist regime, to have a nuclear weapon. What was it? It sort of feels like I am, like it's biblical. I am that I am. I am MAGA. Repeating his pledge to obliterate the Islamic regime in Iran, Trump vowed that, quote, MAGA is about stopping them cold, and that is exactly what we are doing. God bless our great military, which I have rebuilt since the beginning of my first term, to achieve everlasting peace through strength. Make America great again. It's all in capital letters. I suppose I should have been going even louder, shouldn't I? Cheers to everyone. While not naming the specific individuals who had attacked Levin, online observers recognized the commander in chief had written in response to a provocative exchange between the Great One and Kelly, which had devolved into grade school level taunting. Grade school level taunting. Grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change. Diamantino, oh, one of my favorite people on here. Thank you for joining us. You're just in time to get into the dirt, the grade school level taunts of Megyn Kelly versus Mark Levin. It's just getting into the fun of it. If you consider this fun, some people will think, "Oh, this is tragedy that American political dialogue has devolved into this," but this is what we are right now. So, in recent months, Kelly has earned the ire of pro Israel advocates due to her decision to align herself with the anti Semitic positions and conspiracy theories promoted by fellow podcasters Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and Nick Fuentes. During a discussion with Carlson in January, Kelly praised Fuentes, a man who has celebrated Adolf Hitler, promoted Joseph Stalin, supported Hamas, and urged his Groyper followers to rape women. And that's something that people forget about with Nick Fuentes. They remember, oh, promoting Hitler and racism. No, he's encouraging his followers to commit sex crimes because, that generates buzz and traffic or whatever, or because whoever's behind him wants him doing that. Urged his Groyper followers to rape women, as, quote, Kelly praised Fuentes as, quote, very interesting and he's very smart, end quote. She said, quote, there is value to be derived from that guy's messaging, end quote. Kelly, Owens, Carlson, and Fuentes have also been adamantly opposed to the U.S. military campaign against Iran, claiming without evidence that Israel dragged Trump into the conflict. Trump himself chose this. You can't blame Israel on this, particularly when it wasn't just Israel that wanted him to attack, it was Saudi Arabia, too. Evan's asking wonder if Fuentes' parents are ashamed of him. I hope they are. That's a good question. I suppose we'll find out someday. Somebody will do the investigation, I suspect. If his parents are alive, who knows? So, getting into the meat of this. On Sunday, Levin wrote on X, quote, poor Megyn, I should come up with his voice too. Poor Megyn Kelly, an emotionally unhinged, lewd, and petulant wreck. She's completely revealed and destroyed herself. She's everything people say she is, but much worse. Never an intelligent, thoughtful, or substantive comment. Utterly toxic. I don't know how many of you have heard his radio show. He just really high voice and you know. And when I was doing more listening to conservative talk pretty regularly in my pajamas media days, I was a Prager guy. Whereas, yeah, I should do a shout out here. We got some Dennis Prager fans around here. That was sort of the camp I was in. Him and of course Ben Shapiro back in the days. Yeah. Where was I? So here we go. So Levin said this insult: emotionally unhinged, lewd, petulant wreck. She's destroyed herself. Everything people say she is, but much worse. Never an intelligent, thoughtful. So like, let's understand. Levin isn't like an innocent here. He was coming after her. That's important context for what comes next. And I think in some of the subsequent coverage, people may have not realized this, not just justifying. So, in response to that, Kelly reposted Levin's remarks before she struck below the belt. In a post that has since received 6.3 million views, Kelly wrote, quote, micro penis Mark Levin thinks he has the monopoly on lewd. He tweets about me obsessively in the crudest, nastiest terms possible. Literally more than some stalkers I've had arrested. He doesn't like it when women like me fight back because of his micro penis. That's where we're at. That's where we're at now. That disagreements over Israel are settled in the sort of disagreements, the style of third graders. Mhm. I didn't support Trump back in 2015 because I said this was going to happen. I said that his mentality, his cultural values would seep through the rest of the conservative movement. And that's what's happened now. Mark Levin and Megyn Kelly are talking and acting like Trump. The way that Trump would say little Marco and crooked Hillary and pin names on people like that. That's what now Megyn Kelly's doing with micro penis. It's clever. It is. It's clever. You know. Kelly added, "quote Just like all feckless weakling bullies, Micro can dish it out, but he can't take it." Wait a second. You know. Oh yeah. Sorry. Because of his micro penis. Yeah. Sorry. I moved too far down. So she's saying literally more than some stalkers I've had arrested. He doesn't like it when women like me fight back because of his micro penis. And so then Levin responded. Levin then reshared Kelly's jab at his manhood and responded with a Freudian implication, writing, quote, busy Sunday morning for Megyn Kelly. She wakes up and has micro penis on her mind. Suffice to say, if it talks like a harlot and posts like a harlot, it's, well, you know the rest. Shalom. Shalom. Early Monday morning, Kelly doubled down on her vulgarity and responded to Trump's Truth Social post, suggesting that Levin had requested support. Quote, micropenis Mark Levin is such a small man, she puts that in caps. He had to go beg the president for a pat on the head in the middle of a war to make himself feel better about, well, you know, end quote, Kelly wrote. Quote, this after one mean tweet about him, following his 111 Nasty, nonstop, personal, misogynistic attacks on me. Fox has an obsessed harasser on its hands. See what she's trying to do? She's trying to like cast this Twitter argument as he's a harasser and a stalker. And of course, so she's like casting him in this way instead of just engaging in the argument or whatever the argument is. Though, I mean, admittedly, he came after her first. Rejecting the charge that he had solicited support in their flame war from the president, Levin wrote on X that, quote, "No, I did not speak to the president about releasing any statement. These reprobates have nothing but lies and conspiracies and hate. And the more they talk and post, the more people have had enough of them. They will eventually dry up and blow away, like those who have come before them." Thank you, Emmanuel. It's just something I've been doing, playing around with, having the rings. I think it makes it more interesting, you know? On Sunday night, Levin thanked Trump for his praise, writing, quote, "I am beyond humbled by your words and graciousness in writing such a beautiful note and sharing it on Truth Social. I am honored that you took the time to write it. Your courage, strength, and moral clarity are truly unparalleled, and your leadership has made our country and the world much safer." Oh, how's the boots taste down there? Boots taste okay? Yeah. 6 hours after Kelly's initial insult against Levin, her ally Owens took her own shot, writing in a long note on X that, quote, "No matter how many articles Barry Weiss publishes or how many monologues Mark Levin stammers through, the overwhelming majority of people in the world sense that Charlie Kirk was murdered for opposing this war and that Israel's hands are not clean in the story. The blood won't come off. Oh, blood won't come off." I love Macbeth. That's my favorite Shakespeare. I'm usually not a big Shakespeare person, but I've got a real fondness for Macbeth. That's a favorite. Owens further aligned herself with Carlson and Kelly, stating, quote, "People like myself and like Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly, however ignorant we may or may not have been in our earlier assessments, once genuinely supported Israel and thought Zionism was a moral position." End quote. Continuing to advance her conspiracy theory of Israeli involvement in the murder of her friend Kirk, Owens wrote, quote, "In their sheer arrogance, rather than meaningfully working to restore relationships, Zionists continue to use tactics of slander, deception, lawfare, and yes, murder to force their perspectives. They no longer seem capable of making a distinction between illusion and reality. They wrongly assumed that with enough money, they could purchase truth." We got some comment here. Emmanuel, "Cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war, for this could could smell okay. Could smell the okay. 'Cause this could indeed smell small above the earth." Okay. Next, on Monday, former U.S. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, or as I like to call her, Marge Green. 'Cause I don't like this whole Marjorie Taylor Greene. No, it's Marge Green. Emmanuel asks, what happened to Candace Owens? Like 10 years ago, she was still sane. Because the political climate at the time more rewarded sanity. Um, at the time, she was, even before she went right, she was trying to go left. Candace Owens' goal, as Jeremy Boring has talked about, I'm kind of in Camp Jeremy on a lot of these things. As he's talked about, she's only interested in being famous. She wants to be more famous than Oprah. She wants to be the most famous person in the world. So, whichever path is going to most get her there, she thinks she will take it. And lately, that path has been conspiracy theory land. It's been realizing that she could do better than Alex Jones. She will do better than Alex Jones. However, she will probably experience ultimately the same thing that he has. That flying so close, so high to the sun, eventually you face the heat of the lawsuits and you come crashing back down to earth. So I think that's what will eventually happen with her. But we shall see. We shall see. So Marjorie Taylor Greene, she jumps into this. I won't do a southern accent or do her. I wholeheartedly support Megyn Kelly telling the world that Mark Levin has a micro penis. It's the most deserved insult, and I don't care if it's vulgar. And Trump's gigantic defense of Levin only enraged the base more. People are done. MAGA, destroyed by micro penis Mark Levin. Well, I feel like that is worthy of a quote. I feel like that's worthy of being written down and quoted for posterity. Don't you? That's this is MAGA destroyed by micro penis Mark Levin. Marge Green. I tell you, when I was in getting into politics 2001, 2002, really realizing, oh, I should write about this. This was not politics at the time. It was boring. It was supposed to be boring. It was supposed to be boring. And it was a big innovation at the time that you had Ann Coulter. This was like 2002, 2003. This was a big innovation to like come and do a book where you make a bunch of jokes and you be really mean to people. She was the one pushing and innovating that at the time, going over the edge, going even further. And now she's old hat. She's normal. She's nothing special because everybody's doing it, and Trump did it, and Trump's doing it even further and worse. But there's your quote for the day. People are done. MAGA destroyed by micro penis Mark Levin. I'll continue. Green had written her comment in response to Kelly defending her rhetoric to far right influencer Mike Cernovich, who criticized the intra right battle as a quote, total distraction to spend hours a week reacting to each other. It's slave behavior. That's a good idea, Evan Wayne Smith Miller suggests I should put that on a shirt. Yes. Mark Levin should put this on a shirt. Unless it's true. It may be true. Who knows? Um, Kelly responded to Cernovich by justifying herself, writing, quote, disagree. You can take the high road and ignore for a while, but eventually, after hundreds of tweets, attacks, you punch the bully in the rhetorical face, and then he goes running to daddy about his micropenis. While debates about Israel and the Iran war may engage online pugilists. This is my conclusion here. I was proud of myself for this. While debates about Israel and the Iran war may engage online pugilists with audiences to entertain, polling shows that the vast majority of Republicans, 85%, and self identified MAGA supporters, 91%, back Trump's decision to bomb the Islamic regime in Iran. Just as I was saying, earlier, Evan, Islamic regime in Iran. So Marge Green says that micropenis Mark Levin has destroyed, MAGA has been destroyed, but actually 91% of MAGA is supportive of Trump on Iran. 91%. I did not expect it to be that high. I was shocked that it was that high. 91% of Trump supporters are in favor of the policy that the movement was seemingly based on. No more Middle East never ending wars. No more of that. And they're on board with this. Though theoretically, this is maybe just due to like the delusional belief that okay, we're going to bomb and get in and out. Not the understanding that this would take years. That this Iran war would be much worse than the Iraq war. Much worse. Okay, I'm going to read the next article now. Read the next article because I tend to see these people, this movement, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Megyn Kelly, this far right movement, but particularly Nick Fuentes, in the context of disinformation. And I was really happy with this story because I had an excuse in this story to cite and write about somebody that I talk about a lot. My core influences here, Mihai Pacepa, who was the spy master for Ceausescu, Romanian dictator during the Cold War, highest ranking Soviet defector, who had to live in hiding for the rest of his life because there were assassins sent to take him out. And that was a subject that he knew quite a bit about. He talked about. This is his second book, autographed copy that I have. This was autographed to me. And talking about the role of the KGB in the Kennedy assassination. This was the book that came out when I was working with him. This is about Russian and broader Soviet espionage tactics during the Cold War, specifically to plant disinformation, plant lies, especially planting anti-Semitism. And then his final book, co-authored with R. James Woolsey, who was head of the CIA. This sort of lays it all out together, two of them together, makes it easier, more accessible. There's a piece in here in particular, this decoding that he does of Oswald's notebooks, pointing out certain. Anyway, I'll get into that and unpack that at some point. But that's my approach here, which is why I was excited to be able to write this piece, which I'm going to read for you all now. Second one here. Hmm. Yeah. Dos Equis lime and salt, non-alcoholic. I am a big fan. Number of these non-alcoholic beers. Even if you're, just give them a try. So, Iran, Russia push disinformation to spread anti-Semitism, undermine the West. Iran and Russia have both used propaganda and disinformation to promote anti Semitic narratives as part of an effort to undermine the West, according to analysts who this week exposed some of their methods and the damage they have caused. The Simon Wiesenthal Center on Tuesday hosted an online briefing with experts who laid out how the Islamic regime in Iran deploys a variety of propaganda as weapons. One day earlier, the Gino Germani Institute for Social Sciences and Strategic Studies published an in depth report detailing the history of Russia's disinformation expertise. Quote, there is the kinetic battlefield, of course, but there's also the information battlefield, the war for hearts and minds. Modern wars are fought not only with missiles, but with memes, not only with military force, but with persuasion. End quote, said Vlad Hyakin, Executive Vice President of Social Impact and Partnerships at the Simon Wiesenthal Center, opening the briefing. The Iranian regime and the networks aligned with it across Russia, China, and various proxy movements have spent decades building a global propaganda architecture designed for moments exactly like this, Kayakin warned. Rachel Kansfeder, a senior researcher at the Alliance Center for Iranian Studies at Tel Aviv University, and Jackie Alexander, CEO and president for media watchdog Honest Reporting, offered their analyses of the subversive media techniques utilized by Tehran to advance the regime's ideological objectives. Speaking from Israel amid the current war with Iran, Kansfeder prefaced her response by saying, quote, I hope I won't have to run off for a siren, end quote, referencing the warning that Israeli residents of incoming rocket fire receive, telling them to seek shelter. In the briefing's final 20 minutes, Kansfeder had to do just that, apologizing and leaving to take cover from Iranian drone and missile fire. I'm used to that. I've had colleagues over in Israel, and meeting just has to stop when the alarms go off. Before the session's interruption, Kansfeder defined information warfare as quote. Oh, wait, where was I? Yeah, okay. Before the session's interruption, Kansfeder defined information warfare as, quote, the strategic use of information and communications to influence perceptions and decision making systems. She said this can include disinformation, cyber attacks, and good old fashioned propagandistic efforts. And it is so central, I think, to Iran's strategy right now because it's so effective. And I think that the Iranian regime is seeing real yields from it, certainly in the realm of influencing certain media ecosystems. Quote, we find that actually Iran started to forge ties with American figures from the far right and far left as well already by the end of the 1990s, end quote, Kansfeder noted, explaining that online dynamics today have roots going back decades. One example she cited of this cultural diplomacy was the critical success of Iranian filmmakers in the 1990s, which the regime leveraged by holding international film festivals to try and influence Hollywood. According to Alexander, the same online influencers who promoted falsehoods of Israel intentionally targeting civilians and committing a genocide in Gaza have now pivoted to comparable rhetoric about the current conflict with Iran. Quote, and these networks all work together to amplify each other. Each of their posts will get millions of views, end quote, Alexander said. Quote, and then ultimately that seeps into the podcast network. Tucker Carlson will pick it up. Candace Owens will pick it up, end quote. Owens and Carlson have emerged as two of the most prominent anti Israel commentators in the US, often using their platforms to promote anti Semitic conspiracy theories. The Honest Reporting chief also revealed Iran's targeting of those who eschew the ideological extremes. Quote, you start having situations like mainstream Western American news unironically using things like Fars News Agency, Iranian state TV, as a legitimate source without letting their viewers know that this is actually Iranian state propaganda. Kayakin asked Conspheter to explain the role of anti Semitism in both the Islamic regime's ideology and its propaganda techniques. She described a recent development that, quote, officially, Iran has tried to make a distinction between Zionism and Jews in its revolutionary ideology. This is actually something that in the past few years we're seeing less of. This is new. The distinction between Zionists as an enemy and Jews as the enemy of Iran is starting to erode as the regime looks for new ways to legitimize its rule and conjure up images of Iran's enemies and what they're facing. She continued, quote, in terms of the influence operations directed abroad, this is essential, end quote. The Jew hate acts as a glue, enabling what Conspheter described historically as how, quote, Iran starts to position itself as a hub for transnational extremist far right networks. And then of course, we saw that come to fruition with the Holocaust conferences, end quote. I get to give some history here. In 2006, Holocaust deniers gathered for a 2-day event titled, quote, Review of the Holocaust, Global Vision, end quote, which organizers characterized as based in science. Attendees included former KKK leader David Duke, Holocaust denier Robert Farisan, and members of Jews United Against Israel. Duke said at the time that, quote, it's a shame that Iran, a country we often call oppressive, has to give this opportunity for free speech, end quote. He also described Israel as, quote, a terrorist state, end quote, and, quote, the number one terrorist state in the world. Hey, Michael, thanks for joining us. According to Conspheter, anti Semitism, quote, whether it be the Holocaust denial or other forms of it, is the, quote, entry point, and it binds together a lot of these different ideas, movements, and ideological orientations. Agreeing with Conspheter's emphasis on Iran's role in promoting Holocaust denial, Alexander said that, quote, what they're doing is they're poisoning the information sources, the wells where people are getting their information. Alexander explained the downstream impacts of what she called anti Semitic, quote, poisoning of information, noting that, quote, 61% of adults worldwide are getting information increasingly from AI, and 36% of those are using it weekly. And there has been a movement for about 15 years to poison the source that AI then goes to for information. That most prominently is Wikipedia, though not entirely. I was so ready to be done with Wikipedia. I thought as AI was rising, I was so naive. I thought, oh, AI now is not going to be as easily hacked, but it can still be manipulated too, as people are no doubt have been starting to see. Describing Iran's Wikipedia infiltration efforts, Alexander said that Iran is, quote, now paying a new group of editors on Wikipedia to start changing even further information that is there so that when you go to AI to ask it a question, you're going to get a garbage answer. And it will be things like Holocaust denial or erasing Jewish sovereignty and history from the State of Israel going back 3,000 years ago, end quote. Alexander described how a prominent Russian disinformation narrative since the 1970s had begun to recirculate online. You know what narrative has started trending again? Zionism is racism, she said. Quote, we've gone back 50 years, and it's because Russia has a deep connection to this. Yeah, this Zionism is racism. We know exactly. In the 1970s, we know that it was Russia that was pushing it then, and they're wanting to push it now. In November 1975, the UN General Assembly passed Resolution 3379, which equated Zionism, the national movement of the Jewish people to reestablish a state in their ancient homeland, with, quote, racism, end quote, reflecting long standing anti Semitic stereotypes and anti Israel agendas pushed by the Soviet Union. The measure was ultimately overturned in 1991. For understanding the connection, Massimiliano Di Pasquale, an associate researcher at the Gino Germani Institute and director of the Ukraine Observatory, wrote Anti Semitism and Russian Active Measures from the Tsars to Putin, a 141-page report 3 years in the making. Translated from Italian, the Gino Germani Institute described how the study, quote, traces the direct link between the Tsarist and Soviet eras and the regime of Vladimir Putin in the specific evolution of instrumental anti Semitism and demonstrates how the Kremlin continues today in its cognitive war, in its active measures to use false historians and conspiracy theories, such as the protocols of the Elders of Zion, to feed hatred, distort perceptions, and destabilize Western democratic values and systems. I'm going to stop here and note that this is a point that I've made before, and I'm going to keep talking about it and keep exploring it. That the continuity between Tsarism, Soviet KGB, and where's my Putin book here? Ah, it's over here. Here's one we're going to be unpacking in the Right Wing Book Club. We have a sense continuity. Tsarism, Sovietism, Putinism. One continuous thing. Cold War did not end. We just got a break from it. According to the Institute, Di Pasquale shows how Russian anti Semitic narratives come to justify military aggression in Ukraine, or how, after the October 7th attack, Moscow instrumentalized the Israel Hamas conflict to pursue three main objectives: strategic distraction, erosion of Western cohesion, and double standard accusations. De Pasquale's report details the history of Soviet Russia's disinformation turn against the Jewish state, noting the 1967 to 1982 period under Leonid Brezhnev, General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, which was quote was characterized by a period of heated anti-Semitism disguised as anti-Zionism. It was during this period that Moscow helped sow the seeds of the current anti-American and anti-Israeli hatred in the Arab and Muslim world, hatred that resurfaced in full vehemence after October 7th, 2023, both through a series of sophisticated and covert KGB operations and through a massive international propaganda campaign that began in 1967 and continued until 1988. De Pasquale writes that in the 16 years, 1967 to 1982, during which Yuri Andropov, future General Secretary of the party, headed the KGB, quote, Zionism was second only to the United States in terms of the Kremlin's active measures. Key thing to understand here about the Soviet Union, KGB is a state within a state. They were the ones really controlling things, and the Soviet Union around it was the state around the intelligence state that had the power to assassinate people. So, to really understand who was in charge of the Soviet Union at that time, Yuri Andropov, who was the head of the KGB and later became the head of the Soviet Union for not very long. He died pretty quickly, which is kind of ironic. He running things behind the side, and then he's Anyway. According to the report, the 5 anti Semitic propaganda narratives Andropov chose to unleash around 1967 were Jews, Zionists in parentheses, are responsible for anti Semitism. Zionist organizations worldwide are involved in espionage activities. Zionism is a Trojan horse for imperialism and racism in the Third World. Jews collaborated with the Nazis during World War II, and reversal of the Holocaust, i.e., Israelis as Nazis. And then I conclude here. The report cites Lieutenant General Ion Mihai Pacepa, highest ranking defector from the Soviet bloc and former spy master to Romanian dictator Nicolae Ceausescu, who called Andropov, quote, the father of a new era of disinformation that revived anti Semitism and spawned international terrorism against the United States and Israel. So, this broad wave of anti Semitism we're seeing now that's gradually been building over the last 50 years, it didn't just happen. It was specifically engineered by Soviet espionage agency that had unlimited budget, unlimited power, and no rules. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And there's Jasmine Girl slurping all over there. So I've got one more article to read for you. One more that I thought kind of went along with these other two. Hey, sweetheart girl. Yes, I'll take you out in just a second. So this is my third article on here about Tucker Carlson, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. This was a weird story. This was very weird. The weirdness of Tucker Carlson and how he's been throwing stuff out and saying things. I know it confuses people. It's confused me and confused people in my right wing media. Although I've more been in the Jewish and pro-Israel space, but it's still there's a lot of crossover still. It's confusing. There's always been these questions of like, well, is he being paid by Qatar or is he? What's going on? So, Qatar Saudi media shoot down Tucker Carlson conspiracy as ADL warns Iran conflict fueling online anti Semitism. Two Arab monarchies, which remain steadfast in their refusal to recognize Israel's right to exist, have nonetheless dismissed a conspiratorial claim of Mossad false flag attacks against them, alleged by far right podcaster Tucker Carlson. The dismissals of Carlson's assertion came as the Anti Defamation League, ADL, released a new report warning that the ongoing U.S. Israeli military operation against Iran, quote, triggered an immediate online surge of anti Semitic, anti Zionist, and conspiratorial commentary that spanned the ideological spectrum, end quote. In a Monday video, Carlson asserted that it, quote, hasn't been reported, but it's a fact that last night in Qatar and Saudi Arabia, authorities arrested Mossad agents planning on committing bombings in those countries, end quote. Israel's intelligence agency reportedly played a critical role in the killing of Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei in Tehran on Saturday, but there is no evidence to suggest Mossad agents were arrested this week for operations against Qatar and Saudi Arabia. Quote, why would the Israelis be committing bombings in Gulf countries which are also being attacked by Iran? Aren't they on the same side? End quote, Carlson asked, insisting that, quote, Israel wants to hurt Iran and Qatar and the UAE and Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and Oman and Kuwait, end quote. Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates, UAE, signed the Abraham Accords in September 2020 to normalize relations with Israel, and the three countries have enhanced ties since then. On Tuesday, Mashed al-Ansari, A spokesman for the Qatari Foreign Ministry responded to a reporter's request to confirm Carlson's claim. He refused to do so, answering he, quote, has no information about any cells of the Israeli intelligence service Mossad at the moment, end quote. However, Qatar's state security service separately announced the arrest of two cells it said were operating on behalf of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC. Interesting. Then on Thursday, the Saudi Arabian state owned Al Arabiya news outlet reported that it has, quote, learned from its sources that claims alleging that Saudi Arabia and Qatar had arrested Mossad agents planning bombs in Gulf countries are baseless and untrue, end quote. Reports widely circulated this week that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman privately petitioned U.S. President Donald Trump for months to strike Iran, a position that would align with Israel's stated goal of trying to dismantle Iran's military capabilities. Yeah, all the anti Semites online want to scream about Israel supposedly forcing Trump to do this or whatever. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia wants it too. Meanwhile, it's in the business interests, theoretically, at least as Trump sees it, of his business allies in Israel, UAE, and Saudi. Reports widely. So where was I? Okay. Carlson has previously praised Qatar and its House of Thani monarchy, which has ruled the country since 1851. The former Fox News host announced on December 7th, 2025, that he had purchased property in the country and dismissed charges that Qatari funding had influenced his turn toward anti Israel commentary, speculations which had circulated among right wing figures and earned him the epithet, quote, Tucker Qatarlson, end quote, popularized by conservative talk radio host Mark Levin and former far right Florida congressional candidate Laura Loomer. Interviewing Qatari Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman bin Jassim Al Thani at the Doha Forum, Carlson said, quote, I have been criticized as being a tool of Qatar, and I just want to say, which you already know, which is, I have never taken anything from your country and don't plan to, end quote. Qatar has long aligned itself with Hamas and its ideological wellspring, the Muslim Brotherhood, providing a safe haven for the leadership of both organizations. Thani's choice to support the revolutionary Islamist group and its terrorist wing in Gaza has exacerbated tensions with Saudi Arabia and the UAE, both which regard the Brotherhood as an existential threat. Meanwhile, on Tuesday, the ADL released a report documenting how Carlson's anti Mossad conspiracy theory accompanied torrents of online Jew hate. Researchers noted Carlson's comments in particular, writing that he, quote, further portrayed Jewish influence in the U.S. as a hidden malevolent force driving the country toward war through deception and, quote, demonic control, and made unsubstantiated claims about Gulf states arresting Mossad agents planning bombings. The ADL further captured how Carlson, quote, used his response to the attacks in Iran as an opportunity to again promote the anti Semitic conspiracy theory of Israeli involvement in 9/11. The report describes how in his Monday podcast, Carlson, quote, advanced a number of anti Semitic conspiracy theories, including that Israel had foreknowledge of 9/11 and has orchestrated U.S. involvement in other countries through manufactured intelligence, while framing Israel as covertly manipulating American foreign policy for its own agenda. Manipulating America for its own agenda. Manipulating America for its own agenda. Far right podcaster Candace Owens promoted this conspiracy theory on Tuesday when she shared a video of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu countering the charge that Israel targeted civilians, saying, quote, You see the difference. The tyrants of Tehran target civilians. We target the tyrants of Tehran to protect civilians. End quote. Owens wrote on top of the video, "You murdered 3,000 Americans on 9/11, for starters." Oh, God. End quote. The ADL's researchers spotlighted Owens' role in boosting anti Semitic voices. Quote, actors like the neo Nazi Aryan Freedom Network, right wing online provocateur Sneeko, and controversial streamer Hassan Piker in particular appeared across multiple high reach posts, including those amplified by figures with millions of followers like Owens, the report stated. Owens also shared a deepfake image created with artificial intelligence that promoted anti Semitism. The report featured a screenshot of Owens writing, quote, Operation Epstein Fury fully explained, to introduce a reposting of an image showing Trump wearing a white Israel hat, standing in front of two large Israeli flags, and speaking from a podium with the slogan, Operation Epstein Fury, end quote. The text accompanying the image, written by an account called Too White to Tweet, reads, quote, it's not complicated. American Goyim are blowing up Iranian Goyim because America is controlled by the people who call us Goyim and Iran isn't. Operation Epstein Fury helps achieve greater Epstein in the Middle East. Oh, God. I'm sorry, I just got to stop sometimes. I don't have to go on X like I used to as much. When I was writing for JNS, I had to go on there for hours at a time, hunting for stories and seeing what was on there. And it's just a sewer and just so stupid. So the anonymous anti-Semitism of so it's just like ugh, nasty. Operation Epic Fury is the name the U.S. has given to its military campaign against Iran. Owen's play on words appears to be a reference to the late financier and sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, whose Jewish heritage has been exploited as a pretext to openly express hatred toward Jews, amplifying conspiracy theories that falsely attribute the sex abuse scandal entirely to the Jewish community. Some anti Israel voices have falsely claimed that Trump launched strikes against Iran at the behest of the Jewish state. The ADL's researchers documented the depth of this Operation Epstein Fury rebranding, finding, quote, over 35,000 mentions and 28,000 unique authors on X by 4 p.m. Eastern on February 28 alone, growing to over 91,000 mentions from more than 60,000 unique authors about 48 hours later. The phrase is rapidly being weaponized by extremist actors to advance anti Semitic tropes. On Sunday, Jonathan Greenblatt, the ADL's CEO and national director, wrote on X, quote, now the same old prejudiced voices such as Hassan Piker, Candace Owens, Stu Peters, and others with millions of followers are capitalizing on this moment to spew ugly anti-Semitism and spread vile conspiracy theories. You can argue about the merits of the conflict or how the campaign has been conducted, but people of goodwill can do so without resorting to anti-Semitism and rejecting bigots in our midst. Okay, there we go. Those are my 3 articles. I hope. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts, or was there anything that I didn't that was not explained properly in the article? I'm happy to rant on things a bit further or unpack things a little bit, but I think that's. I mean, there's a lot of information, particularly in that disinformation piece. I made a point to try and load that up with as much as I could because I've got my editor's given me some pretty good flexibility with my articles. Sometimes it can be just straight and short to the point if there's not a lot, but other times, if there's a lot of good material, then I can go a bit longer sometimes. So just to remind and wrap up again, we first we first talked about this Mark Levin, Megyn Kelly flame war, which is ostensibly about pro-Israel, anti-Israel, but turned into bunch of insults, and she got pissed off and micro penis accusing him of And then Trump had to step in, or chose to step in. He didn't have to. He chose to step in and defend Mark Levin. And this was one of the few times that Trump is starting to push back, which I think it's probably easier to push back on Megyn Kelly than it is obviously is Tucker Carlson. He's seemingly been tolerating Tucker. So that story, then the Iran talking about Iran's disinformation approach, which is similar to Russia's disinformation approach, which these people are all tied up in. And I gave the example in the third story of Tucker Carlson putting out these strange stories accusing Israel of having cells when it was actually Iran doing it in Qatar. So it's just amazing. So I hope those three were useful to people. And I think I'm going to keep trying to read the articles that I do for Algemeiner and give a little extra commentary. Um, if anybody has any suggestions or comments, please leave me. Let me know. I'm still trying to figure out um, what to do with these live streams. What's going to be an approach that works. Um, I'd also encourage you to pick up some of our books. God of the Desert Digital Media Studios. We've got our poetry book, Home Life, by our poetry editor, John Bishop. We've got Perdition, The Other Blue Planet, wonderful traditional science fiction by Alec Ott. And our big bestseller right now, I mean, it's not a bestseller, but I'm happy that it is selling, Secret of Fatima by Peter Tanis. So glad this actually is selling. Didn't know, but I guess it is. So, and also currently available only in ebook. The print should be coming out later this year. Miranda's War by Howard Foster. Wonderful, funny satire. So, okay, I think I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up now. May try and do some more live streaming later. I'm trying to get in the mode of doing it more regularly and figuring out different things to do. So, okay. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate your support. Have a great evening or great day wherever you are.